You don't get wealthy by chance. You get wealthy by change. And that change begins in the silence of a decision, a moment, a quiet conversation you have with yourself when no one else is around. That's where the journey begins, not in the marketplace, but in the mirror. Now let me ask you something simple. When was the last time you sat still and asked, am I becoming the person I need to be for the life I say I want? It's a question that haunted me once. I was 25 years old, broke, behind on promises and working hard, too hard for too little. I remember sitting in my small apartment in Beverly Hills, not the glamorous kind, the kind with creaky floors and a view of a brick wall, and thinking, how did I end up here? You see, I was sincere. I had ambition. I wanted to do better. But nobody had ever sat me down and said, Jim, it's not just about wanting more, it's about becoming more. That all changed the day I met Mr. Schoff. He didn't walk in with a briefcase of tactics. He walked in with a suitcase of philosophy. He said, Jim, if you'll learn to work harder on yourself than you do on your job, you'll become a magnet for success, not just financially, but personally, spiritually, relationally, because money is a shadow. It follows value. That hit me like a lightning bolt. So today I want to sit with you, just like Mr. Schoff sat with me, not to impress you, but to impress upon you the truths that changed everything for me. Because wealth isn't just about money, it's about becoming the kind of person who can attract and manage it with wisdom. So here they are, 7 money rules I lived by. Simple, but not easy. If you're ready, I'll walk with you through each one, slowly, like a mentor, like a friend. The first rule is this: money is a result, not a cause. Now that may sound philosophical, and it is, but it's also deeply practical. Most people chase money like it's some mysterious prize handed out to the lucky. But money is simply a certificate of value exchanged. It's what people give you in return for the problems you solve. I remember asking Mr. Schoff, how do I make more money? He smiled and said, Jim, don't wish it were easier. Wish you were better. The marketplace pays for value, not time. Think of it like farming. You don't get paid in the spring. You plant in the spring. You cultivate through the summer. You protect the harvest from pests and weeds. And then, if you've done it right, you reap in the fall. That's how money works. You don't get rich by hoping. You get rich by planting the right seeds. Effort, learning, discipline, and service. And you cultivate those seeds with time, patience, and daily action. Ask yourself, what seeds have I been planting lately? Because if the harvest you're reaping today doesn't satisfy you, maybe it's time to change what you're sowing. Rule number 2, learn to live on less than you earn. Now, this is the most elementary rule, but it's also the one most people break. Not because they're foolish, but because they're undisciplined. And discipline, my friend, is the bridge between thought and accomplishment. When I was in debt, I kept thinking I had an income problem, but what I had was a discipline problem. I'd get a raise and upgrade my car. I'd get a bonus and book a vacation. I thought success was about looking wealthy, not becoming wealthy. Mr. Schoff taught me, Jim, if you can't manage $1,000, you won't manage 100,000. The problem isn't the amount, it's you. So I made it my mission to master money, starting with the little. I lived below my means. I saved 10%. I gave 10%. I invested consistently. And most importantly, I tracked every dollar, because if you don't know where your money's going, how can you expect to multiply it? Let me ask you something personal. If I followed you around for 30 days and observed how you spent your money, would I say, this is a person preparing for wealth? Or would I say, this is a person hoping wealth will rescue them from their habits? The difference is subtle, but it's everything. Rule number 3, don't pursue money, pursue value. Money is like a shadow. Run after it, and it runs away. But stand still and become valuable, and it shows up quietly at your feet. I used to try every little thing to make a buck. Odd jobs, side gigs, shiny shortcuts. But they never lasted. You know why? Because I hadn't changed me. I was still the same man chasing different dollars. Then one day, I heard something that struck me to my core. You don't get paid for your time. You get paid for the value you bring to the marketplace. That was it. I made it my obsession to become more valuable. I read every day. I studied communication, sales, personal development, leadership. I learned to speak, to write, to think, and soon, without chasing, opportunities found me. Because money always follows value. Here's a question to sit with. What are you doing today to increase your value to others? Don't wait for a promotion. Promote yourself in your habits, in your learning, in your disciplines. Because once you become more valuable, you can never go back to being underpaid for long. And let me tell you something. Wealth earned through value brings something even greater: pride. You don't just make money. You become the kind of person who deserves it. Rule number 4, the greatest investment is not in stocks, it's in yourself. I know that sounds like a cliche, but cliches become cliches because they're so true, they can't be ignored. One time, I was speaking to a group of entrepreneurs. A young man raised his hand and said, "Jim, I've got $1,000 to invest. Should I buy some stocks or maybe some crypto?" I said, "Son, put that 1,000 into books, courses, and mentors. Because if you get smart enough, one day you'll be the investment." The best return on investment isn't 10%, it's transformation. I spent thousands of dollars, money I didn't always have, on seminars, books, cassette tapes. Why? Because I knew that every new idea, every new skill, every new mindset was a seed that could produce a harvest far beyond what I planted. I became addicted to learning, obsessed with growing, and over time, I watched my income grow in direct proportion to my insight. Don't let anyone tell you otherwise. Your mind is your greatest asset. If you grow it, your income will follow. Let me ask, what are you feeding your mind each day? Junk food or nutrition? Entertainment or education? Opinions or wisdom? Because what you put in will eventually show up in your bank account, your relationships, and your future. And remember, money doesn't make you smarter. It only amplifies who you already are. That's why growth must precede gain. And here's the beauty. No one can take that growth from you. Not the government, not inflation, not a bad economy. If you become the kind of person who can produce value, you'll never be broke again. Not because you have money, but because you have you. And that, my friend, is the beginning of real wealth. If there's one thing I wish someone had told me earlier, it's this. You don't just catch colds from people. You catch habits. You catch attitudes. You catch philosophies. And most importantly, you catch financial thinking. I used to spend time with folks who always had the same conversations. Complaints about the boss, jokes about being broke, praise for the weekend, and dread for Monday morning. And it felt normal. Because when you're around that kind of thinking long enough, you begin to mistake mediocrity for reality. But here's a truth I had to learn the hard way. If you hang around 5 broke people, chances are You'll be number 6. It wasn't until I got around people who thought differently, people who valued growth, who talked about ideas instead of people, who invested in themselves instead of spending on distractions, that my own thinking began to expand. Mr. Schoaf used to say, "Jim, make sure the people in your circle are pulling you up, not dragging you down." So I started to prune, not with arrogance, but with intention. I stopped spending hours with people who weren't going anywhere. I limited exposure to negativity, and I sought out mentors through books, tapes, letters, in-person conversations who had done what I wanted to do. And slowly, I noticed something extraordinary. My income rose, my standards rose, my vision expanded, not because I changed the world around me, but because I changed the voices around me. You must protect your environment like you protect your health, because what surrounds you will eventually shape you. Here's a question to ponder. If I became exactly like the 5 people I spend the most time with, what kind of financial life would I have? If the answer makes you uncomfortable, don't panic. Just be honest, then be brave, and then be selective. Rule number 6. Set goals that pull you forward, not ones that merely fix the past. Most people use money goals like a mop, trying to clean up the mess behind them. I just want to pay off these bills. If I could just get out of debt. If I can just survive this year. That's not a goal. That's desperation. Now hear me. You've got to clean up the past. But don't live there. You don't drive a car by staring in the rearview mirror. You set goals, not just to get, but to become. I remember when I first started setting real goals. Not wishy-washy New Year's Day resolutions, but specific, written, measurable goals. I wanted to make 6 figures. I wanted to become a speaker. I wanted to have a library in my home that could rival a small college. And I wrote those goals down. I looked at them daily. I visualized them. And I backed them with discipline. One day someone asked me, "Jim, what if you don't reach your goals?" I said, "That's not the point. The real value is in who I'll become by trying." Because if you shoot for $1 million and fall short at $500,000, you're still better off than never aiming at all. The real wealth isn't in the money. It's in the identity you develop by committing to a vision bigger than your current reality. Let me ask you, what's pulling you right now? Are you being pushed by pressure or pulled by purpose? Because one will drain you and the other will develop you. Write your goals. Rewrite them, review them, refine them, not just for what you'll achieve, but for what you'll activate inside yourself. Rule number 7, the one that wraps all the others together. Character builds wealth that money can never buy. You can learn all the tactics. You can master the strategies. You can read every finance book on the planet. But if your character doesn't grow with your income, you'll sabotage yourself every time. How many lottery winners go broke within a few years? How many athletes and celebrities make millions only to end up bankrupt? Why? Because they had money, but not wisdom. Income, but not identity. Wealth, real wealth, is about who you become in the process. It's about integrity, humility, discipline, generosity, delayed gratification, vision, responsibility. Those are the currencies that never devalue. And here's the beauty. You don't have to wait to develop them. You don't need a bank account to build your character. You just need a decision to become the kind of person who can handle wealth, sustain it, multiply it, and do something meaningful with it. I remember a day, years after my life had changed, when I walked into a bookstore and saw one of my own books on the shelf. I stood there in silence for a moment, not proud in an arrogant way, but humbled, because I knew what it had taken to get there. the late nights, the quiet disciplines, the little habits no one saw, the courage to change, the seasons of planting, the winter days of doubt, the long, hot summers of effort, and finally, the harvest. And I realized something. Wealth isn't what you earn. It's who you become on the way to earning it. So let me speak to you, wherever you are in life right now. Maybe you're young and hungry. Maybe you're older and wondering if you missed your chance. Maybe you failed a few times. Maybe you've succeeded but feel empty. Wherever you are, you can start here. Not with tricks, not with shortcuts, but with philosophy. Plant the right ideas. Water them daily with discipline. Pull the weeds of toxic thinking. Protect your mindset from pests and doubt, and trust that in due season, the harvest will come. You have what it takes. You do. Not because life is easy, but because you are willing. So remember these 7 rules, not as steps in a manual, but as seeds in a field. Water them, watch them, and one day you'll walk through a harvest of abundance, built not by luck, but by a life of wisdom, value, and character. And when you do, don't just keep it to yourself. Teach it, because the world needs more people with wealth of heart, not just pocket. Let me ask you one final question. If you started today, right now, to live by these principles for the next year, where could you be? The answer isn't out there. It's in you. Now, go become the person your future is waiting for.